Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we do something slightly different. If you've been around for a bit, you might know the tech tree talk format, where I take a brief look at a new coming out tech tree, and we get some idea as to what the tech tree is all about. But it doesn't help with existing tech trees, and one of the most commonly asked questions I get from new players is, which line should I grind? Simply because there's just so many of them. And I have made a couple of sort of overview-ish videos about it, but I think one topic that people really have been asking me a lot was, how do you, should I play this line? Should I grind this tree? How far? What are these ships all about? And ships in a tech tree aren't always the same. There are changes, very radical changes. So I'm going to start that today with the German cruiser line, as you can see here in the mighty Hindenburg. But we're not going to just be talking about the Hindenburg, but we're going to be talking about the full line. So I'll give you a bit of an overview of what this line is good at and what it is not so much good at. And then I'll show you not 3 complete battles, but some scenes from battles. We'll be playing today the Tier 5, the Königsberg. We'll be playing the Tier 8, the Admiral Hipper, and the Tier 10, the Hindenburg. But before we get to that, let's go through German cruisers in general. We're pretty much going to be ignoring Tier 1, 2, and 3 because these are really tiers that you just be playing, you know, for a couple of rounds. Tier 4 is sort of where things start to get a little bit more interesting because you'll be spending a bit more time with these ships, and then Tier 5 and onwards, obviously. So, German cruisers, what are they good for? German cruisers have very good armor-piercing shells, and the high-explosive shells are kind of meh. They generally have sonar, and as such are pretty good at dealing with torpedo threats. They are not cruisers that you would use in a support role. They generally lack things like radar or defensive AA. So when it comes to supporting battleships against threats, screening and such things, they are pretty good at dealing with destroyers, but oftentimes they're more played in an aggressive role. German cruisers have torpedoes. And they are short-range torpedoes, but they tend to have a fair few of them, and they can hit you pretty hard. So, starting with the Karlsruhe at Tier 4, we've got light cruisers, all the way up to and including Tier 6. So when I'm talking about German cruisers being somewhat sturdy, I'm talking about Tier 7 onwards, because until Tier 6 and including the Nürnberg, this is very much not the case. These are extremely lightly armored ships, and they are very easy to take out with large caliber shells. So light cruisers means we've got 150 millimeter guns all the way up to the Nürnberg, and then at Tier 7 we're changing to a heavy cruiser caliber. So ground rules, very good armor piercing, and dangerous torpedoes. Up to and including Tier 6, very light cruisers, so you have to be careful when you're being shot at. But relatively rapid firing 150 millimeter guns with very hard hitting armor piercing means in combination with sonar, very dangerous against destroyers. The Königsberg and the Nürnberg have a little bit of an odd layout. So if you're looking at the turrets here on the Königsberg, you can see that they have one turret forward. The Karlsruhe is not a turreted cruiser. She's got casemate guns, so scattered all around the ship. The Königsberg is the first turreted ship in the line, but she's got two of the turrets rearwards, which means you are oftentimes more tempted to, well, either give broadside or sail away from things in order to get your rear turrets on target. The Königsberg has a specialty in that these are 360-degree turrets, so they swing around all the way. With the Nürnberg, that's no longer the case, so you've got the more traditional kind of turret layout, and you still have the turret rearwards. Then, starting in Tier 7 with the York, we are going for a balanced cruiser layout, and except for the Rhone at Tier 9, this is going to hold. So we're looking at twin guns. The York is a bit of an oddball because she is the only ship in the line that actually has very good high explosive shells. She has a very obscure caliber for a German ship with 210 millimeters, But these high explosive shells are actually really good. So on the York is one of these ships where that many people dislike, because you're coming from the Nuremberg, and I did when I started playing the line. Coming from the Nuremberg, you have a maneuverable, and I'm getting used to the new AI where the ship stats I have to tap like three. The new UI we have to tap like 3 times for the ship stats. Actually, let's go into the comparison. That's maybe easier. So if we're putting the and yes, Wargaming, thank you very much for removing additional options here. So if we're looking at the Nuremberg, the steps from the Nuremberg to the York, we've always got the precise aim and sonar layout, but we have a sturdier hull with the York, and we have now 210 millimeter guns, but the armor piercing is still good on those, but the high explosive is actually really good as well with a 9% fire chance. Because if we are now looking from York to Hipper, which is the next step, and we compare that way, then you'll notice that the Hipper is significantly sturdier than the York. Again, this is a theme. But she's moving down to the more traditional 203 millimeter guns, which have significantly better armor piercing damage with almost 1,000 base damage compared to the 800 only base damage on the York's armor piercing, but worse high explosive shells and 3% less fire chance. York is an HE spammer, a bit of a ranged HE spammer. She does have torpedoes, but generally what you want to do with York is often use the HE and armor piercing against destroyers if at range. You do get 12 torpedoes on the York, and they are basically the same torpedoes as on the Hipper. So a York up close is very dangerous as well if you stroll within 5.4 kilometer range. So base range, if you're playing against these ships, historical camos will have 5.6 and a cookie. Base, any other camo will generally have 5.4 kilometer range of torpedoes. So just be aware that these things have lots of torpedo alpha damage, but very short range on it. And obviously, yes, they have sonar, so smoking up next to one is always a terrible idea. So yeah, that's the switch. And with the Admiral Hipper, we are looking, if I can get out of here, yep, there we go. With the Admiral Hipper, we are looking at sort of the Tier 8 standard heavy cruiser, standard assault cruiser kind of play. Very hard-hitting armor piercing, good torpedoes, and a relatively sturdy ship that can get into a brawl with a battleship at times. And if you're playing it smartly and get up, so running up close to a battleship that is isolated and has no fire support, and then blasting it with both the guns through the deck into the citadel and with torpedoes is one of my favorite plays that you can do with these sort of things. Tier 8 is kind of the end where you can do that. So just again, overview, we've got light cruisers all the way up to Tier 6, very mobile, short-range torpedoes, rapid-firing, hard-hitting 150 millimeters, but no armor. Then Tier 7, we've got an HE spammer, which is sort of the oddball. Tier 8, we've got the sturdy brawler kind of battleship. Tier 9, we have a return of the rearwards biased gun layout with the Rhone. Many people dislike the Rhone. I disliked the Rhone as well when I played it first. But the Rhone is actually not that bad. The Rhone is your typical Tier 9 sort of road bump that gets the payoff in Tier 10. But she has an important function, because while the Hipper is a brawler that can play very well at close ranges, the Rhone can do that too. But the Rhone is sort of the point where you are switching to ranged fire, because that's what you're going to be needing in Tier 10. So you see the uptick in the precise aiming skill on the Rhone from the to the precise aim 2, and the Rhone is a very similar hull to the Hipper, linear progression pretty much, but she's basically got just one more gun. Otherwise, it's a Hipper with a rearwards bias layout. However, they are more precise, and the Rhone is sort of the step to ease you into away from the brawling play. Because if you're looking at the torpedoes, she's got Hipper torpedoes, only that she only gets 8 instead of 12, and they have a longer reload. So they've basically taken away torpedo firepower, and And with that, many people really, really dislike the ship. It's not a bad ship, but you have to start switching from the brawler role in tier 8 to the ranged role in tier 9. You will have to learn at this tier how to use this armor piercing effectively. It is very good armor piercing, but it's not going to punch through battleship belt armors. So if you are engaging battleships, and you have to in tier 8 you basically be getting up close and personal most of the time, but in tier 9 you'll have to learn to target how to target the stern mostly. You can try for bow, but I personally find stern generally being a bigger hitbox that's easier to hit, with the additional benefit that you can score damage to rudder or engines in the stern. So if you're targeting enemy battleships at range, you kind of have to learn how to start making these 200mm guns work. It is very good armor piercing, but it's not going to penetrate a battleship belt, so you're going to have to hit the weaker armor sides. And then at tier 10, we have the Hindenburg, which is the culmination of the line. It's a large, heavy cruiser, and she gets 12 of these excellent German 8-inch guns. And with it's basically a Rhone, but with an additional turret in front. Only that it isn't, because if we again compare the two, so let's get the Hippo out of there and put the Hindenburg in. Compare these two. The Hindenburg gets a legendary equipment. We'll talk about that in a second. Other than that, ship skills is always going to stay the same at this point. You're basically having a Rhone hull with a bit more hit points, and the maneuverability is really not there anymore at this point. These ships are not greatly maneuverable. They are ranged ships. Not always. You can brawl very effectively in Hindenburg, not so much in the Rhone, but in the Hindenburg. For the top tiers, 9 and 10, you will oftentimes stay more at range. So Hindenburg's guns hit harder and have better range than Rhones. And obviously you get the extra turret. These guns are very precise. That already was the case in tier 9, but in tier 10 as well. And you will score full penetrations against destroyers at 10 kilometers with these guns. If an enemy destroyer gets themselves spotted and a Hindenburg captain knows what they're doing and can estimate the range on these things, it does take a little getting used to really get the feel for the shell velocity and for how much lead you're going to have to give for particular destroyers. But you can take 2/3 of the health of an enemy destroyer down in a single salvo with this. These guns can really, really hurt and mess up enemy destroyers' days very effectively. And yes, against everything else, obviously as well. Plus, you do get 16 torpedoes. You still have the 5.4 kilometer range. So don't go thinking that you can just, oh yeah, I have lots of torpedoes. I can just rush out into multiple enemy ships, drop torpedoes left, right, and center, and come out victorious. You're not a battleship. You're still a cruiser, a very good cruiser with decent armor, but you're still a cruiser. However, if you are engaging lone battleships in a Hindenburg, you have two choices. You can either play ranged, dodge the incoming fire, and pepper it with lots of armor piercing, specifically again into bow or stern sections mostly, or if you have the hit points to spare and you can time it such that you can maybe take a single salvo from an enemy battleship, but then have the torpedo power to blow it out of the water, then this is also something that you can do. Right, so final overview of the line, all the way up to tier 6, light cruisers, very squishy, rapid firing, hard hitting, armor piercing 150s. Tier 7 York is the oddball, it's an HE spammer. Tier 8 Admiral Hipper is the bare knuckle brawler. Tier 9 Rhone is the learning experience where you need to start playing at range, and Tier 10 Hindenburg is where you have long range, precise firepower with excellent AP performance, and you're effectively a very, very dangerous opponent for most enemy ships. All right, let's have a very brief look at commander skills before we get into some of the gameplay features. I've been using a regular commander here for testing, but you can also get legendary if you have a legendary commanders around. We'll talk about that in a minute. The battlefield support for an additional sonar is pretty good. I personally like the artillery maintenance for additional dispersion as long as you're playing at range. You can go for fire supremacy for an additional precise aim, but I personally find that I prefer to have the survivalist for more durability on the ship, and having more hit points in the late game is a good thing. The recon and surveillance, obviously, again, versus exploit weaknesses here is kind of a question here. I like this skill because I do enjoy having the sonar available. And since we're going with the battlefield support for an extra sonar, having the faster cooldown and the longer duration means that you are a sonar menace. And this in higher tiers, there will be lots of torpedoes. So it's worth having that. And it also makes the ship very dangerous against destroyers. Talking about destroyers, if you are playing a Hindenburg or any German light cruiser that isn't the heavy cruiser that isn't the York, at ranges of 6 kilometers and under, you need to switch to HE because your armor piercing will over-penetrate. Obviously, the marksman skill is a no-brainer, and the extinguisher is kind of a must-have as well. You don't have engine boosts or secondaries, so demolition expert, kind of meh, but it is what it is. More importantly, however, the APCS skill. This is really the skill that you're going to be having, because most of the time you will be firing armor piercing in these ships. You can set fires with the light cruisers. They work okay. They've got a 4% fire chance on the 150s, which is kind of what the Americans get. But the armor piercing is generally better. The York, obviously, but none of these ships would in any way whatsoever justify IFHE. So APCS for more penetration is always the choice here. When it comes to talents, there are options. I personally really enjoy the main battery range. And then for a kill, you get more speed and maneuverability, which for an aggressive cruiser, for me, is a good thing to have. And then lastly, if you get torpedo hits on target, then you get torpedo reload improved, which again, for an aggressive cruiser works well. You could also go the other way and get, which is a bit more guaranteed than the spots, because you're not really in a ship that is going ahead to detect things. Which gives you main battery traverse, which is also nice to have. And then you've got a couple options further down that you can take. But 5 Citadel hits is doable if you're lucky, but it's and it gives you 12% shell velocity. So it's not going to be happening an awful lot. So I think both of these are very, very good choices. And I personally just really enjoy the range, because the range is really what you want to build for. And that's when you... if you do want to save up for the historical camouflage here, 6,000 gold is a lot, but if you manage to get your hands on one for the tier 10, the extra 4% range is pretty much worth it. Very quick word on the legendary module. It is a mixed bag legendary module on the Hindenburg. It gives you 8% range, but it nerfs your surface detection by 12%. So, as you can see, I am playing with a concealment build, and while the games I've recorded are pre 8.0 with the new concealment system, I think that might even be more important. So I'd be a little wary of the legendary module here, just because 12% concealment nerf is a big hit, even though 8% range is very nice to have. All right. Generally, in terms of build. Starting tier 8, I would start going for concealment. Before that, it's not absolutely necessary. Obviously, in tier 5, you're not getting that anyway, and you can just do this the traditional acceleration radar build. But yeah, I would use the main battery mod 2 for faster guns. Until you have the precision module up and available at tier 8, I think. Not sure if the York already gets it. Can have a quick look. She does not. So starting tier 8, I'm personally switching to the precision module, but it's a matter of and then concealment over maneuverability, because concealment is very, very valuable for cruisers. But yeah, there we go. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of an overview, and I am not going to, like I said, I'm not going to do full battles, but I'm going to show you some snippets, some sequences from gameplay that can reinforce a little bit what I've just been talking about. We're starting out with the tier 5 with the Königsberg, and I am spawning with the friendly T22 who is going for the cap, but who is not necessarily scouting. So asking the team, please go and scout. I am going to support you from here. I'm going to remain bow in because we don't know where the enemy is. We know that there's maybe a destroyer out there. And the T-22, yep, I am spotted. So enemy destroyer, there she is. There's the Shenyang. And the Shenyang has just had a little bit of a brown alert moment. The reason I'm not pushing any further is because, as you can see, there's a battleship back there as well. Now, I don't have sonar on this ship, so I do need to somewhat be predictive about the torpedoes. Shenyang has deep water torpedoes, so she is not going to be able to drop torpedoes on the T-22, but the T-22 very much can do the same to the Shenyang, which means that Shenyang player is already down. Well done, so we have secured that, and now the T-22 is going up against the Iron Duke, which is a British battleship, so it is going to be firing high explosive, because that's the shell type that it starts with. You are starting with high explosive shells. I personally like switching to armor piercing. As you can see, against destroyers, it just makes all the difference. And the Königsberg's 360 degrees rear turrets means that you'd never actually need to give any kind of broadside. So here comes now obviously the trick of seeing that you get the guns on target in the stern. There is an enemy Minikaze as well, so T-22 is in all kinds of trouble. But he is chasing the Iron Duke, and I am maintaining more of an angled position. But now I'm switching fire to the Minikaze because that is the bigger threat here. So T-22 needs to disengage now, and Minikaze has run into the Iron Duke. Everybody goes for the T-22, which means I can finish off the Minikaze without too much problems. There he goes, and T-22 is now in retreat, but that means I can take over. I'm still on full hit points, and there's only a König bot next to us, so I'm gonna let my teammate here dealing with it. I'm gonna ignore it mostly. Now observe the turrets on the Iron Duke. The Iron Duke is swinging the turrets around, so I am giving as little broadside as possible, because the high explosive hurts. But if you had used the armor piercing, it would have hurt more. And I'm still targeting the stern section of the armor. And there you can see the 360 degree turrets in action. Now the Iron Duke has to try and dodge torpedoes, and I am risking a single broadside because he's been using high explosive, and I know that he can't finish me off with high explosive. And that was the end of the Iron Duke. Otherwise, I could have probably just also gone around the ship. But that's basically what you want to do in the tier 5. You support your team, and if you're up against battleships, or make sure that you never give broadside as much as you can. These are light cruisers. You can use the torpedoes, but be aware that you don't have much health, and you don't have any armor whatsoever. So you can be blasted out of the water very quickly. But if you know what you're doing, you can very much take on battleships in these things without too much trouble. Now here I am in the Admiral Hipper, and we've lost pretty much the destroyer on our flank. There is a enemy lightning that I am in a ranged duel with, but I am getting shot at by a hood. So I am having to hold the flank here by myself, and trying to finish off the lightning, because I can finish him off in one good salvo. But that lightning player knows what he's doing. He is wildly dodging and evading. So now I sort of have the problem here of basically having to hold this flank all by myself. Hood is pretty much stationary, so I'm targeting the stern, and I'm going defensive against the incoming fire from the hood. And as you can see, my armor piercing has no problem penetrating the hood's stern. Now hood is moving forward, as you can see on the smoke, and I'm still jockeying for position here because I know that the lightning's out there. But Hood looks like he's now willing to push. So now is the time. I've got hit points recovered. I've got 50 seconds left on my next heal. Hood is stopping again. So as long as he's not moving forward, I'm happy to go on a ranged duel. Now he's firing. So now rather hard right and dive under most of the damage. And yeah, it looks like he's not willing to commit any further. There is lightning out there, but I do have sonar available if I need it. So I think at this point it's time to roll up the sleeves, dodge under the hood salvo, and then show him who's boss. So let's get the sonar up in case the lightning has any torpedoes out here, because I am at this point focused on the hood. And I'm obviously going, there's the lightning over there. I am going for a torpedo run. I am within range of the lightning torpedoes, probably, okay. Port torpedoes away. I have lost one of my torpedo tubes, but I am keeping my bow towards the hood. And there come the lightning torpedoes, so that's why I do need to go evasive already. Unfortunately, hood is going in between, so he's raking my superstructure. But he is over penetrating. I am very much not over penetrating, and as you can see, I can citadel a hood through the deck without too much trouble. And at this point, I'm just going to literally shred him through the deck plating at point blank range. I've got torpedoes ready again, and that's a very, very dead hood. And now I can focus on the lightning, and that is something that you can do in a ship like the Admiral Hipper. Like I said, it is a not American gun angles there. That is something you can do situationally. You can take on 2 enemy ships if you have the if you have the situational awareness and you know what's going on. And at close range against battleships, these things are absolutely lethal, as you've seen on the sheer amount of damage that I've done to the hood with the guns and with the torpedoes. Now here in the Hindenburg, we are defending our left flank against 2 or 3 destroyers and an enemy battleship. I've got a Mogador being annoying and very quick. So I'm obviously hanging back as much as possible because I want to be relatively safe from that Montana over there. And at the same time, I do have, I believe, a Yamato with me that needs protecting. But Mogador's just made a cardinal error. 6 kilometers is just enough for my guns not to overpenetrate, and that hurt. But I've got the sonar running, so the torpedoes coming in from the center are not a huge problem. And now obviously I need to dodge the Mogador torpedoes as well. And there is still a Z-44 out there, so guns out of alignment. Mogador is disengaging, and he gets to run away another day. But we've got enough distance now between myself and things that I can start taking down the next destroyer under fire. And oftentimes it's not so much just about sinking ships, but about making them think twice about what they are about to do. Unfortunately, my friendly Yamato is now deciding that he wants to push against a German destroyer that has a smoke screen, and without me being ready to assist. My own sonar is on cooldown, so I'm assuming that I'm being torpedoed, and I'm changing course and speed. The Montana is shooting at the Yamato, and I think we are having a bit of a bearing onto where that German destroyer is shooting from. But no luck with the blind fire so far. Now I've turned around. My sonar is ready again, so sonar up immediately. There are all the torpedoes coming in from the Z-44, and I am getting shot at by the Monty. And there's the Mogador. So Mogador, first target. That's a dead Mogador. Good night. And that just leaves the 1 destroyer. So the Yamato has backed up into a defensive position. Mogador has torpedoed me, but I have the sonar running, so I absolutely knew already what's coming here, and I'm just backing off to dodge the incoming Montana fire. Don't be afraid to just get your forward turrets on target and go into defensive positions. But Yamato is now pushing, and we dodged the incoming torpedoes. So we'll see there's only 1 destroyer left, and at this stage we're healing up to almost full health. Yamato's it's got a decent torpedo defense, and it's only a Z-44, so precise aim up at this range, and we'll see what we can do to protect the Yamato against the obvious torpedo run. But that Z-44 is now very, very dead because he's coming under air attack and he's coming under concentrated fire from German 8-inch armor piercing, so he is very dead, which leaves the Montana, which now has no more screens, which means we can now go forward and do an attack run against the Montana. I can probably take a single salvo from the Monty without too much trouble, but at point blank range you don't also necessarily want to risk that. So right now Montana is more busy trying to shoot at the Yamato, which does the right thing and again goes defensive rather than sitting full broadside against the Monty, which at some point is, the turrets are turning. I think he is about to realize that there's a Hindenburg rushing him. And because I have no further threat on this flank, that Montana, no, he's still shooting at the Yamato. That Montana is I think the technical term for that is completely screwed. So now he's realized that I'm here, but it's too little too late. So I'm going to get setting up for a torpedo run here. And I can't, like I said, I can probably take one salvo, assuming that he's going to try to go forward and dodge. But I think he's given up on life at this point. Just disabling the auto lock on and going for the deck shots. Maybe a Citadel on the Monty would be nice. Or I'll take a destroyed turret as well, but so far no big luck. But it doesn't matter. We took a salvo from the Montana, shaved about a third of the hit points off. But if he's in torpedo range, he's a very, very dead Montana, and that's how you can sort of late game make good use of the Hindenburg. So I hope, all in all, this has given you a little bit of a better impression as to how play German cruisers, what the difference is between the different ships in the lines, and well, what you've got to look forward to and how you can play the Hindenburg successfully in the end. It is a very good line in my opinion, and one of my favorite cruiser lines. I like the aggressive cruiser play, but you do have to have good situational awareness, make use of your sonars, know where the destroyer threats are, and do yourself a favor if you're playing the light cruisers, switch to the armor piercing. Don't shoot high explosive at destroyers in ships like the Königsberg and the Nürnberg. I know they come preloaded with HE. I think it's wrong. You should be firing armor piercing in almost all situations. So unless you're kiting away trying to set fires on the battleship, but mostly you're better off firing armor piercing in these things. And yeah, go forth and enjoy. That's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.